you are unfamiliar with freeCodeCamp, they are an international nonprofit that is dedicated to providing accessible tech education for everyone for free forever. They got a website over at freecodecamp.org, and you can check that out and you can sign up and start learning how to code today for free. We are freeCodeCamp Indy, which is the official local chapter in Indianapolis, Indiana, that's ran entirely by volunteers. We offer help for beginner to intermediate programmers. We provide a supportive community for learning and career transitioning, and we like to host events to encourage collaboration and learning how to work as a team, such as hackathons and project days and talks and workshops. We are on meetup.com, so you can find our future live events published there. You can also subscribe to this YouTube channel. We do a talk every month from different speakers. So we'll be posting those on here if you want to subscribe and see those in the future. We now go to the recorded talk. All right, I'm going to pass off Javaughn. Introduce yourself and take it from there.
All right. So hi, my name's Javaughn Lewis. I am currently a quality assurance engineer apprentice at Lilly, a part of their technical skills first apprenticeship program for folks that don't have a background in like the general college background, I guess, 4-year degree. And before that, I interned at Quizlet, which was a really great experience working with TypeScript, and that was my introduction in learning that. And yeah, I guess before that, I went to Kenzie Academy, which is a boot camp that used to be based here in Indy. Unfortunately, it was disbanded recently, but that was my introduction into basic web development, front end and back end software engineering. So yeah, let me go ahead and try and share the screen right now, which, all right, hopefully that's pretty visible.
Yeah, that's great.
Cool. So this talk is about incremental adoption of static type checking in JavaScript, which this talk kind of assumes that you have a little bit of background knowledge on JavaScript, but I will go into some basic concepts about types and things of that nature. So thing that you want to know about TypeScript is that it's a superset of JavaScript, which means that it's kind of like a wrapper around it. It offers a few additional features, but the big thing about this is that all valid JavaScript is also valid TypeScript. So there's not too much of a learning curve between, working between JavaScript and TypeScript. Some people kind of consider whether or not they should learn TypeScript before learning JavaScript. Since it's a superset of JavaScript, you can't learn TypeScript without learning JavaScript first. So there's that. And then what are types? So you might have heard of data types in programming languages, your basic string, number, Boolean. JavaScript also has undefined, which is kind of like a placeholder for, well, not a placeholder, my bad. Kind of like not anything. Null is a placeholder that you can set as like a particular variable. So like if you have a variable, say like a number of apples or something, and you don't have any, you can set that as null as like a placeholder. And then TypeScript also adds additional types: void, any, unknown, and never. So void is similar to undefined, but it's specifically used for what a function returns. If it doesn't return anything, if it returns undefined. And any is kind of a lazy type, which if you don't want to type something, you can set it as any and it won't do any type checking. Unknown is typically used for what we call generics, which is passing in parameters to types. If you're familiar with passing in arguments to a function, it's kind of similar to that. But that specifies that the consumer of that type should set it as the generic. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we go into a little bit of code. And then you have the never type, which just says this type should never happen. So there are kind of steps in the strictness of type safety. So the first step is inference, which is basically what you get out of the box with VS Code. And if you set a variable to like a string or something, it'll infer that that type is string. Then there's JSDoc, which allows you to explicitly set types for specific variables. And then TS-check, which is a comment that you can put at the top of any file, any JavaScript file, which will enable static type checking, similar to using TypeScript in its all its full glory. And this will show errors if there are any type errors in your editor. And then there's using TypeScript, which is the .ts file, and then setting strict to true, which we won't talk about too much just yet. But this talk focuses on the first three: inference, JSDoc, and TS-check. So like I said, inference, VS Code uses TypeScript behind the scenes to make it easier for you to use JavaScript. So if you've ever used Visual Studio Code and you've set any variables or anything like that, and you've noticed that you can get auto-completion for some of those things, like say our string example, you set a variable to a string and then you can call string methods on it. It knows that that variable is a string because it inferred that type. And then, yeah, types are inferred from usage or declaration. Then we have JSDoc, which is where inference fails, JSDoc can pick up the slack, which we'll show some more examples about that. But it's also handy for documenting code, as the name implies. It was originally used for documenting libraries and packages, so that when you consume those libraries, you can easily see what each method and property refers to. So you can add different comments and different tags. Then we have TS-check, which shows errors in the IDE, which are the little red squigglies. And then, this is the early step for real type safety in JavaScript. And we love that because it prevents common type errors. So let's see, I'm going to have to switch to the code. All right. Can you all see that okay? It should just be blank. Yeah.
Yeah, but try typing something. It may be a little too small. I think your screen is too wide is the issue. So it's making it very short on my screen because I've also got the chat pulled up and people next to it.
Right. Let me see if I can adjust that a little bit.
Whoa, there we go.
Is that all right?
That looks good. Yeah, it looks real good.
Cool. So we have two options, I guess. Or want this section to be kind of interactive. We're going to go through kind of a basic to-do app, which is the most common way to understand something other than, the basic hello world. So let's see. Let's say I wanted to have a class that handles creating, reading, updating, and deleting, doing CRUD operations on to-do items. How would I do that? I could start by making a class. Well, this should probably be a JavaScript file, my bad. I could start by adding a class of to-do list, and it needs a constructor, and probably, I don't know, let's set this dot items to an array. Now, we were talking about inference before. This is one of the ways that inference can fail. If you hover over this is of type any, because it can't infer anything from this empty array. So one way that we could fix that is by using JSDoc to set the type of this property. So you can see we start to get some details about what we're specifying here. And we could set this to, I don't know, for now, let's just do a string, an array of strings. And you can see that it now knows exactly what that type is. So what's the point of that, I guess? What we can do is we can set a method. I don't know why I did that. To create a to-do item. And we can do this dot items dot push. And now you can see that it knows exactly what type to put into here. If we put, let's say, a number in here, why aren't we getting any errors? I thought I would get an error if I put the wrong type. But we can get those errors if we set that TS check at the top of the file. Now you can see the red squiggly that says argument of type number is not assignable to string, which is useful if we want to keep the integrity of this property consistent. So we can go ahead and put a string and it'll work. So we can set item here. This would be our string that we're passing into the method, and we can pass it in here. But you see this type is of type any, which you'd expect that to be an error because any isn't assignable to type string, but in TypeScript it is because any is assignable to any type, which is probably not good for us because then we can't ensure that this is going to be a consistent type. And we've kind of ended up lying to TypeScript. So what we can do is do another JSDoc comment here and set the parameter type to string, and that'll resolve that. So that was a little fast. Any questions so far?
So it looks like you're doing JSDocs stuff on some of those lines. Is that something you're going to go into and explain what that is to people?
Right. I mean, I explained it a little bit, but I can expand on it a little more. So these comments are JSDoc comments, which allow you to document properties and methods, functions, things like that. And it's especially useful when talking about type safety because you can specify the type of these properties, methods, variables, so that you can get IntelliSense and do type checking with the TS check up here. There are a bunch of different, let's see, they call these tags. You see if I do the, the slash and then 2 asterisks, it'll auto complete to JSDoc comment. And then if you do an @ symbol, you have access to all of these different tags here. We won't go into all of them, but mostly useful for us right now is param, which specifies the parameter you're passing into the function or method in this case, and then type, which specifies the type of whatever you're pointing it at, and you place this above the thing in question that you're trying to document. So I think that maybe we don't want strings as our to-do list. Maybe we want it to be an object with different properties on it, like a name and whether or not it's completed. Maybe you guys have some ideas on what properties we can add to a to-do list item. Anybody have any ideas?
I think you kind of nailed the 2 main ones. It's the name or whatever the description is for the item to do.
Due date might be interesting too.
Oh,
I like that idea. Yeah.
or you could do favorites, little star icon.
Okay. Yeah. So, or maybe is favorited.
Yeah, that's a good name.
I guess that is I don't know.
Chris and Ashley said priority, which I think is kind
Priority.
of the idea as favorite. It's like a star. Maybe that's a better name for it. Unless
Maybe.
the priority is multiple values. That's a good idea because then it's like low, medium, high instead of just Boolean.
Yeah, I like the idea of different values for priority. I'll put that in there. Anything else? This is a pretty solid list.
Pretty robust.
Right. And you can see it can balloon up pretty quickly, and having to remember the name of all of these, how they're spelled, it can get a little hairy. But first, how are we going to type this instead of using a string here? We could put it right here instead, but that could get a little messy. So I think we can talk about another JSDoc tag, which is typedef. And we can specify a name here to do item. And then we can specify properties on this. Well, I think, let's see, what is this saying? Well, yeah, we can specify properties. And we can add each of these like that. Let's see. Okay. And then each of these we can specify their type in the same way that we did the param here. Like so. So name would probably be a string. Is completed would be a Boolean, true or false. And due date, let's see, this is well, I'll put it as a number. We can specify a date as the number of milliseconds from, what is it, 1970, something like that.
Yeah.
It's a little easier than putting a date here, but if you wanted to know, you can just say date like that. But, you know, I think number is a little easier for our purposes here. Is favorited would be another Boolean. And priority, let's see, what priorities do we want to put on our to-do item?
Low, medium, high, ultra, super duper urgent.
I like that. Okay. So I wonder how we would put multiple different options. So
You could use numbers to determine priority, but then if you wanted to stick one in the middle, for example, you say, well, you know, medium, high, something like that. For future proofing, that can get tricky too.
Right,
so,
right.
Yeah, that's something I always struggle with too when it comes to naming and data structure.
Right. So this kind of brings us to one of the utilities that TypeScript allows us, which is union types. So, well, union and literal types. So for literal types, we can put a literal string here for, let's say, low, and then the union type allows us to specify that it can be one of multiple values. So low, medium, high, and ultra, super duper, what did you say?
Urgent.
Urgent.
You can maybe just make it urgent if you wanted to.
No, I like that. That makes it that might allow us to drive home another point about TypeScript, which is who would want to type this all the time? Like type as in type it out. So yeah. So you use the pipe symbol to unionize these strings. So now that we have our type definition, if you hover over to do item, you can see here's our type. All nice and pretty. So now we can say, instead of this being just an array of strings, let this be an array of to-do items. Now we can see we're getting a type error because we specified the item we were using as the parameter as a string, and that needs to be a to-do item. So what does that allow us to do? Let's see. Let's say I wanted to make a new to-do list. I don't know, call this grocery list. I can't spell and talk at the same time. Grocery list. Okay. So now we can call grocery list.create item, and with VS Code, you use the control space to get the IntelliSense autocomplete options. And we have all of our types here. So we can, let's see. Well, now that I think about it, you probably don't want to specify all of these when you create an item, right? Maybe you just want to specify the name. Maybe some of these should be optional, right? So we can go back to our type and change this up a little bit. So let's say name is required. That's fine. Is completed. Well, yeah, that's fine. It's required for the type to do item, but due date, maybe we don't want all of the items to have to do the due dates, because would you put a due date on getting onions from the grocery store? Maybe, but I don't know. I don't think so. So in order to make the due date optional, after our type number, we can add an equal sign to say this is either number or undefined. But the important thing here is the question mark here, which says that this property on the to-do item object is completely optional. So in order to specify whether or not the type matches, due date doesn't have to be there, and it can still match that type. If we did just number or undefined, it wouldn't work in the same way, because we're expecting a type due date to have either number or undefined, but still be on the object. So that's why we use the equal sign here. Is favorited, that's fine. And then priority. This is a tough one. Should it be optional? Should it have a default? I don't know. What do you think?
Say optional.
Okay, cool. We'll make it optional. Let's see. I wonder if this works. Yeah, cool. So same way is just adding that equal sign at the end.
There should also be, I believe you put square brackets around the name. So if you put square brackets around is favorited, for example, that would mark it as optional. But there's a question in chat that came a little bit ago that I wanted to, before we get too far away. Is there anything special? Yeah, you don't have to. I'll read them off when they come up so you can focus. Okay. Is there anything special you have to do to get @tscheck to work? Does it require compiling the code, or is it something that the IDE just picks up?
That's a good question. And I'm not sure, I haven't checked it for every editor, but with VS Code, because it uses TypeScript under the hood for interpreting JavaScript, you can just put that at the top of the file and it'll automatically do type checking. So you don't have to do anything extra but put that comment at the top of the file and view the code in VS Code. VS Code does the static type checking.
It's the TypeScript engine, and so any editor that has the TypeScript engine built in, VS Code being the most popular editor today, should be able to pick up on that. Apparently, I had accidentally clicked on in my text chat to send all my messages just to RK instead of to everyone. Sorry, RK, for the spam. I'm going to post a link to Discord to everyone now because I did that earlier and it didn't show up. Back to you.
All good. So yeah, I didn't know that you could just wrap this in square brackets and it'd still be optional. Well, that's another way to do that.
If that Boolean property, if you do equals false, then Boolean equals false, then you're setting the default value for it, and then you can make it with square brackets optional. And if you don't put anything after the equal sign, then the default is nothing, which is undefined, which makes it optional. So you're kind of like doing a cool little hack that I didn't even know about. The other one. Well, so that's kind of neat.
I don't know why it's yelling at me for this.
That should, maybe it's because the is favorited needs to be in square brackets so that it has a default. Is that what it needs?
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know.
But cool nonetheless. And maybe I like this syntax a little better. It looks nicer. But we weren't actually doing is favorited as optional. Cool. So yep, 2 options. And so now with the create item method, we can specify only some of the properties. You see that the due date and priority have question marks after them, denoting that they're optional and you don't have to pass them in. So
I misled you. It's the is favorited goes inside of the square brackets, and then is favorited equals true or equals false. That's where it goes. It's not next to the boolean, it's next to there.
Oh, right.
That's why I was upset.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Sorry. Yeah. I had to look up one of my own pieces of code to find that. Go on. This is great.
Okay. So one more thing about this is we want to make it easier to interface with this method. I don't want to pass is completed and is favorited to the create item method because we know it's going to be false when you create the item. So, I mean, unless you want to specify it being favorited immediately upon creation, which maybe, but in any case, we have to talk about utility types, which is a few kind of like, let's call them helper functions that TypeScript provides, which allows you to create types from types, which sounds a little bonkers at first, but let's say you don't want to specify the, let's see, what was it again? The booleans is completed and is favorited. So what we can do is say, instead of this being the type to do item, let's let it be, I'm going to write this out and then I'm going to explain it. Cool. So this is kind of like a helper function that creates a type that we take the to-do item type and remove the is completed and is favorited properties from it. This is the emit utility type. And if you hover over it, you can see its JSDoc description. Construct a type with the properties of t, which is what we pass in. We call this generic, which we talked a little bit about before, which is essentially a parameter to this helper. And except for those in type K. So this is a union type of these properties. Does that make sense? So now we're getting an error here because this is no longer a to-do item type. It's this whole mess here. So we can say instead, this is kind of like a partial item. You could probably rename that, but it's fine for now. So we're passing in all of these properties and then we'll specify is completed and is favorited to be false. Now, one thing I do want to show you is what these red squigglies kind of show us here is exactly what types we're missing. It's missing the is completed and is favorited. So it makes it really easy to see exactly what you need to do. And there you go. No more errors, and we can just specify exactly what we need, which is the name. Let's say I wanted to add, I don't know, what do you want to add to our grocery list?
Rutabagas.
Rutabagas.
And actually wants some cucumbers.
I like
We're trying
cucumbers.
to give you multi-syllable vegetables to trip you up.
I don't even know how to spell rutabaga. But I also wanted to
No one does.
add an emoji here.
No one does.
Because I think that's pretty cool. I don't know. Yeah. So we just added a cucumber to our grocery list, and if we do a console.log of our grocery list.items, you can see we've got the cucumber and the is completed and is favorited set to false. I think that's pretty solid, yeah. Maybe a few more just for fun. I don't know. Kiwi. Is there an emoji for kiwi?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, perfect. One more?
Anybody else want to throw one out there? And type it in or unmute. Up to you.
Eggs.
Eggs. Thank you,
Okay,
Andrew.
okay. Perfect. Love it. All right, so now you can see all of our items in there. Cool. So the point of using this instead of like an array doing the class is so that we can add different methods to interface with it and get all of the, fancy types. So let's say we wanted to get a specific item, right? Let's say we wanted, I don't know, if this were an app, maybe we'd have a detail screen and you can add a description or something. But whatever the case, let's say we wanted, let's call it a search. And let's say you want to pass it in a query, which is like a string. And then you want to return whatever you find in the items array. But maybe, yeah, no, I think that should be fine. And then we can use the value of each item. And nice thing about this as well is that we're getting the type, the item type here. So if we do a value, we can easily figure out what each of these types are. And it just makes it much faster to work with JavaScript. So let's say we want to search off of the name, and then let's see, there is a search function or method. And let's see. Yeah, search based off of the query. And I think if it finds something, it returns, yeah, a number, which is the index of the first substring. So if I understand correctly, this would return -1 if it doesn't find anything. So we want to find the first value whose query matches. So if it doesn't equal -1, this should return a to-do item. If it doesn't find anything, it'll return undefined. You can also see that the return types are being, return type for the method is being set here. So one thing we are missing, queries of type any. Let's fix that real quick. Let's see. And we want it to be a string. Cool. So let's say we wanted to get, I don't know, get the kiwi. So we could do grocery list dot search items, and then let's search for that emoji we put. Cool. If we console log that kiwi, look at that. It worked. And just to make sure that that, works for everything else. Oh, that's interesting. All right, I guess if you pass an empty string, it'll get the first item. So it should work for the egg as well. Yep. Cool. So, any questions about that? Or any questions in general so far? I know we got like 2 more methods to go through.
Okay. There's nothing in chat currently, but I'll let you know if anything pops up.
Cool. So we can create new items. We can search for items. Let's do a update. Right. Let's say we wanted to update an item. And for ease of use, let's just use the same query. Whoops. Which will allow us to use the method that we already used for search. Cool. But we also want to pass in some options to update it. Let's see. How would we do that? Well, we probably want a second parameter here for the properties. And of course, with JSDoc, we can add as many tags as we want and set this to, let's just do to-do item for now. Sure. And then, oh, am I editing the wrong thing? I'm editing the wrong thing. Okay. Whoopsie. Okay, so let's say we can add a few more properties to the to update the item. So now that we have the item, I guess we're interfacing with these items based off of an array, so we probably want to get the index instead. Now that I think about it, let's see. Let's do, I guess, basically the same thing, but instead find index, yeah? Which works the exact same. And we can set this to index instead. And then with that index, we can update this dot items to whatever we set as the props. And this works, no errors, because this is a to-do item and we're indexing one of the items in the list. If we passed in something else, of course, we'd get those errors saying it needs the properties of to-do item. But you don't want to update the entire thing. Maybe you want to update different parts of a to-do item. So we can use another utility type to say, let's call this partial to-do item, which makes all of the properties in type T optional. So similar to what we did up here with wrapping these in square brackets to make it optional on the to-do item here, we can create a new type that makes everything optional. So instead, we could make this just modify the properties that we set. Perfect. No typers. Let's see. Let's say I just got cucumbers today. Yeah, I think so. Let's make that, let's complete that item. So we can do grocery list dot update item, and then look for our cucumbers. Whoops. And we get the auto completion here, and let's set is completed to true. And if we console log our list again, you can see that cucumbers are completed. Perfect. Any questions there?
Nothing in chat at the moment. I will say, though, you're doing a lot of stuff with kiwis and cucumbers. The chat's a big fan of the egg.
Oh, it is. Nothing with eggs. Okay, so I will do more with eggs.
Just as you go along. Just remember, big fan of eggs in the chat at the moment.
All right. Duly noted.
Ashley says mas huevos. Andrew's a big fan of eggs. We got a lot of egg people going on right now. Chris is in there. Okay. We're all about the eggs today.
Well, I mean, honestly, I'm not a big fan of eggs myself. Sorry to be, you know, not on the bandwagon, but you know.
That's gonna turn on you.
Well, never been afraid to have an opinion. So let's see, we've got create, basically read, update, and let's do a delete. Let's say we just finished an item, we want it off the list. We can use the same query, grab that from up here, move that down, and then let's see, what's a good way to do this? Instead of a find, we could use a filter and set this dot items dot filter. Well, this dot items equals this dot items dot filter. And then we can say, we take the value and let's see, this might be interesting. I guess we're still doing a search. Yeah. So, right. So if we're filtering the items array, and we're returning all of the values that return true here. So does this work the same way? If it does match, then this would be, well, actually it might be, right. So, right, we're searching for each value to have this query that we specified, and if it doesn't match, it'll return it. It'll return true, which will, you know, append to that array that we're filtering. So I think that should work. Let's see. Let's say we just, well, I don't want to delete your egg. You guys like it so much.
Get rid of that egg. We're seeing The bandwagon is going to crush you. Team A, you don't want to get an unruly mob on your hands.
Okay. We just wrapped up the cucumber. Let's remove the cucumber. All right. So
All right.
grocery list, delete item, and let's specify that cucumber again, and take a look at our grocery list here. Looks like we just got the kiwi and eggs. I think that worked out. Cool. Let's see. That's pretty solid. It's a lot of code here, but you can see it was pretty easy to do with the auto completion and IntelliSense provided by our type safety. Any questions? Anything we can add, maybe? We got a couple minutes here.
Yeah, let's take a moment and see, does anyone have questions in chat? Is there anything that wasn't immediately clear to you in chat where, or if you want to unmute and ask questions to give more nuance instead of having to type out. Is any parts of this that you're not getting? Mark is giving a big thumbs up. He's following right along. He's getting it.
We love to see it.
All right. Okay. Everybody here is big braining today. We're kind of getting it. We're getting it. You're doing good. I think we're getting it.
Okay. I was thinking maybe, let's see. We might have to update the is completed to true a lot. We could really easily make that into its own method. Same thing, basically. Complete the item. And basically it's the same as this update item, and then query and setting it to, I don't know why I did that. Setting it to is completed true. Perfect. So instead we can do complete item and remove that extra parameter we got there. Easy. Let's see. I can't really think of anything else.
Yeah, me neither.
You can add a bunch of eggs because y'all love it.
Yeah.
There you go.
Oh, playing
only eggs. Just remove the kiwi and cucumber. We don't need it. Just eggs everywhere.
Oh, man. We're gonna have a cucumber omelet, but not anymore. It's an egg omelet with extra egg.
Cool.
Egg burrito where the tortilla is also egg. I think that's good. So it sounded earlier like this is sort of the setup, and you're going to show this evolve into something else, or
we could do that if y'all think you're ready.
I think everybody's all right. They seem to just be happy that eggs are being involved.
All right. Well, I wanted to kind of, have like maybe a second talk next year if I feel up to it. That would be a second part for real full-fledged TypeScript, but I could give you a sneak peek.
I was curious, you were talking about the ultra super duper, and you were like, that's going to lead into something else.
Yeah, that's going
to lead into something.
Right. So let's see. We didn't add any priorities to any of these. I forgot about that. That's a good catch. Sorry, I'm removing your eggs. But
What you gotta
let's
do?
make the priority on the egg ultra super duper. I don't even remember what it's called. But with the IntelliSense, we don't have to remember because it'll autocomplete it for us. That was really the only thing I was saying about that, I guess. And we can go ahead and add, let's see, why is it not, there you go. Oh, we didn't do due date either. We could, let's see, remove all this real quick. Let's say we wanted to make a new list, to-do list of some kind. I don't know. Let's call it work list. Yes, very dry. Unless y'all have another idea that's less dry.
Travel list. You got to go
Okay.
to Italy at some point because, you know,
I like that.
was it Venice? It's like half underwater already.
Man. Okay, so
It's going to need a due
let's,
date for Venice.
for sure, for sure. So let's do, let's create an item. Let's give it a name, Venice. That's how you spell it, yeah. Do we want to give it an emoji? I don't know. Is there a gondola emoji? How do you even spell that? Boat? I don't know. Sure. Let's
You
just
go
put
like a
that there.
boat emoji.
Yeah. I think that's the best it's gonna get right there. But let's give it a due date. And I think an easy way to do this would be making a new date. And let's say, I don't know, when is a good time to go to Venice? Right now. Or maybe 2025. That's solid. Maybe?
Yeah, that's good. Give you a little over a year to get things sorted.
Okay. And then this is a number, so you can see that date is not assignable to type number. And we can, let's see, what would be an easy way to do this? Is there a get or?
I always forget
Let's
which one
see.
it is.
Is there like a to value? Yeah, I always forget, but we love the type inference and, you know, auto completion that is available to us so we can see exactly what each of these things are and which one we need to use. I think it's value
It's like
of
having
perfect.
Stack Overflow in your IDE.
I
Exactly.
think it's get time dot get capital T time, and that will return the millisecond number that you're looking for.
I see, I see. I like value of though. I don't know. It seems simple, easy. Looks like it's exactly what we need. Returns the stored time value in milliseconds since January 1st, 1970. That looks right. So now, let's see, is there an error down here? I don't know what that is. Let's try and console log our travel list here. Looks like, yep, we got a due date. Is it the right due date? Let's hope so. But yeah, I guess if we wanted to, we could set it to a normal date instead. And then we'll get a typer here letting us know we should change this. And looks right. Wait. Oh, because it's UTC.
Yeah, it's offsetting it for your time zone.
That's fair.
So it's just a few hours. But that's basically 2025.
Right, right. Well, maybe it's a little early because, you know, we got to get a head start before, I don't know, the apocalypse or something. But anyways, yeah, that's pretty solid. If we wanted to do something with this, let's say, I don't know, we wanted to sort the list. based off of the due date. That seems like a reasonable thing to do. We could add a few more items just to make sure that that works. Travel list dot create item. I don't know, where else do we want to go?
Yeah, Chad, where do we want to go? Australia.
Australia. Okay.
Actually, he's excited to see some koalas.
Oh, I was gonna put a spider here, but koalas work too. Yeah.
And Mark is if you have time, can we go to Funky Town?
Funky Town. Okay. Let's do, I don't know. Maybe Australia is a little easier to get to. Let's do 2024. And oh wait, that's not how you do it. 2024
should be a dash and then the month and then dash and the year. I mean the year, month, day.
Okay. I don't know when we want to go. Sure, just random.
Middle of
I
the
don't know
year,
when that is.
right in the summer.
Okay. Well, would it be summer for them? I don't know.
Oh yeah, they're backwards. Everything's upside down down there.
Let's do one more. And what was that one? Someone said something. I don't remember.
Funky Town.
Funky Town.
Yeah.
Is that one word?
It's 2 words and there's a space. Yeah.
Okay. Let's do, I don't know, a guitar. Sure. And maybe we want to go, let's see, 2023. Let's go yesterday. We really want to go to Funky Town. Okay.
We gotta get there yesterday.
Right.
Our travel list has a priority. It is yesterday for Funky Town.
Okay. So that seems pretty solid. Yeah. So now we got a full travel list with due dates to boot. Cool. I guess, when was that? The 25th? I guess the 25th of June falls on a Tuesday. Interesting. Okay. So we could make a new method, but I don't know. I think it might just be easier to do it inline here. Let's do prioritized destinations. Sure. I'm very bad at naming things, sorry. But let's say travel list dot items dot, let's see, there's like a sort, right? Let's see, I don't even remember how this works, but
It'll sort automatically. Unless you want it to, as long as it's like an array of strings or array of numbers, array of dates, it'll just sort them automatically.
But it is an array of objects, so.
Then you'll have to do the A/B approach.
Yeah, I never remember how this works, but we can try it. So both A and B are going to be to do items, and we want to sort it by the due date. So I don't know, let's do A due date minus B due date. Is that allowed? This would be allowed in JavaScript, but TypeScript's having a fit because, let's see, why is it having a fit actually? That's a weird.
It's because it's a type of date instead of a type. Oh, it can be undefined?
It looks like it's set that.
It's possible to be undefined and you can't subtract undefined.
Oh, that is true. It is right. I forgot we said it is optional.
If you did greater than or less than, that should probably work. Doesn't like that either. Okay.
Yeah. So I guess it does make sense that, you know, if we're optionally setting these due dates, then it would you know, it can't really do math operations on undefined. But let's see. So
You
this
could
did,
you could
this is,
wrap the first one in parentheses, and then inside the parentheses do a dot due date, or and then a number minus b dot due date or a number, and the number
I see what you're
could
saying.
either be like 0. So if it's undefined, it just uses 0, or maybe like infinity. You can just type in a capital I infinity.
That's an interesting, let's see. I don't know. I prefer the new double question mark because that literally means undefined instead of, or null or undefined instead of falsy. But let's see. Man. But I did want to say also that this is probably, you know, keeping us keeping us from having an error in our code. So that's one of the benefits of TypeScript is I completely forgot that this could be potentially undefined, and the way I was doing it could have worked, but you know, that could have saved us from like long hours of debugging. So let's see. Still don't know why it's yelling at us. It's saying something about must be of type any. Oh, is it because? This is actually a tough one. I like how y'all stumped me. That was great. Good on you. Any TypeScript wizards in the chat?
The left hand of an arithmetic operation must be of type any number or big int. But like maybe it just doesn't understand.
I'm an idiot. So date is not, you can't do arithmetic on a date. So we need to do the same value of, there you go, to get the number, which that would have worked in JavaScript, but that's this, there are some quirks about TypeScript. JavaScript would have coerced this into a number, even though it's a date, because it knows you're doing mathematical operation on it. But let's see what that returns. So our original list was Venice, Australia, Funky Town, and we got Funky Town, Australia, and Venice. That makes sense, I think. Yeah. And if we move this around, let's do Australia as, let's say we never want to go there. Let's just put at the end. Cool. Perfect. Yeah, that was a tough one. Yeah. And then you see that it also put that nullish coalescing operator there because you can't call a method on type undefined. So I didn't even do that, and it knew to save me from myself there. If we do that, that would give us an error. Cool. I think that gives us a good idea of all the different things we can do and accomplish in a pretty short amount of time with TypeScript.
Nice. Okay. Questions in chat. Anybody have any questions? Feel free to unmute. Gwen had to hop, but before she left, she said that you have a good pace and demeanor, and you would make a good teacher.
I'm blushing. Oh,
pretty high praise. Did you say you went to Kinsey Academy?
Yeah, I did.
Gwen was a teacher at Kinsey Academy, so that's high praise.
Okay,
for a little bit. I'm not seeing anyone type into chat. Enjoyed it. Thanks for putting this together, says Andrew Poland. Yeah. The other thing I can think of as far as like intro to all this stuff that I think might be good to explain is the difference when people say TypeScript, they're kind of talking about three different things. There's the TypeScript compiler and the TypeScript engine and the TypeScript language or syntax.
Mhm.
And this has been a really good demo of the TypeScript engine. That's the thing that's built into VS Code and how that can infer types from the TypeScript language, which we didn't really touch on much tonight, but also can infer types through JSDocs as well, and it works exactly the same there as far as understanding the types. Thanks, good
Right.
job, Jump. See you, Brad. Bye, Brad. Oh,
One thing I guess I didn't. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. What was the thing you were going to say?
I didn't touch on like actually doing documentation with JSDoc, which
I was
is
about to say the same thing. Like that's
right, which is kind of its purpose. It's in the name, which is pretty simple to do. You can just add some basic text here, and whenever you hover over either the item itself or the method, it shows your documentation there, which might make it easy for you to, let's say you write some code, you document it, and then you come back to it like 3 years later. There's some kind of like love letters to yourself in the documentation. So pretty neat feature that's useful even in the TypeScript language, even though you don't have to specify the types in this way.
Yeah. I think that the comments there that it lets you add in the context for what this function is that you just wrote and what it does and why it exists and how to use it. And all the arguments are passed in and what those things are actually going to represent. Like under the hood, this all gets turned into zeros and ones, but like as a human going and looking at this code, having that context, especially if it's like, oh, this is like the context for the whole file, or this is a really big, heavy, complex function, and like I can just read the first sentence of the description and be like, oh, okay.
And on a team, that could be really valuable, right? That your type checking is essentially also documentation is interesting.
Yeah. And again, the TypeScript engine treats the types in JSDocs as equivalent to types written in the TypeScript language itself. So if you don't want to create a .ts file and set up the compiler and all of the dependencies to get that to run, you can get basically the same effect here through the in-editor tools. The TSC tool, though, when it runs, it will check the entire code base and find issues across it, which is useful if you're importing in stuff between files. Mark had a question. Mark says, love TypeScript, but most of the teams I've worked on don't use it. We usually use prop types. I assume he's talking about a JavaScript framework like Vue or React. We use prop types, which can be messy sometimes. Which non-TS type checking would you recommend?
That's a good question. I think prop types are specifically a React thing. I know you like to avoid that. Yeah, for like specifying props for components. But I'm not sure if you can get the same effect with JSDoc for props in React. But
well,
if you
and
didn't,
because you're right, it's React specific, so it's only in components. So where we really get fidgety about prop types, even more than components, would be like helper files, services, things like that, where TypeScript could be a huge benefit. But yeah, I've been trying to sell teams I've been on for years on TypeScript, but it's also, you know, if it's a greenfield project, that's one thing, but if it's legacy code, that's That's a very, very hard sell. And for good reason, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm curious if I'm trying to see if it works in the same way as defining prop types using TypeScript proper.
yeah, and the prop type system is, and being able to do prop type checking is something that's not really unique to React. Pretty much all JavaScript frameworks have some variation of that. Yeah, I think on TypeScript can be a very contentious thing. It's a very love it or hate it kind of system. But the JSDocs approach is a really good way to get the same functionality. There's a plugin for ESLint called ESLint-plugin-JSDoc, I believe. And you can set up that linting plugin to enforce the JSDocs system so that every single function requires a JSDoc comment block, and it can automatically do all the formatting to make it look nice and pretty. And if you add or remove or rename any of the arguments for that function, it will catch that the JSDoc doesn't match that, and it will alert you. So it sort of forces those to stay in sync with each other. What have you written up here, Javaughn?
Looks like a basic like React
using
thing.
JSDocs
Right.
for prop type checking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it looks like it works. Yeah.
I would say most people, when they use the way they use TypeScript, is essentially as a replacement for prop types, at least in React. There's a lot more to it, obviously, but I love having like a file for my types and interfaces and that kind of stuff. It's been really makes it really easy. And then there are like Prisma and some of the other like database integration libraries will create types for you, which is ridiculously easy because then you change your schema and it changes your types. You don't have to go through and there's not this redundancy that you have to go through and make sure everything's synced. It just does it for you, which is almost like cheating.
Yeah. Sounds pretty cool. And yeah, it does look like you can use JSDoc for prop types.
Yeah. And you can also, I've done this in a project where you can define your JSDocs like an interface where it can be reused. So you can have a file where you define all the JSDoc comments, give each one a type def name like he's done there, and then you can associate that to a variable that's equal to undefined and just export that variable. And then you can import that, because all of this is just plain JavaScript. You could then import that variable into any other file and then use that type definition anywhere in that file. I've done that before on different libraries, and it works very well. It's a nice clean way to reuse the stuff so you don't have to copy and paste the same big chunk of type definition everywhere.
Yeah, I completely forgot about I mean, we didn't really go over it too much, but yeah, you can import types pretty easily with the regular import. We don't have anything to import though, but you could say specify types in a different file the same way you would do it here, and then import that from, say, I don't know, types or whatever.
Yeah.
And then do a dot like to do item. And then one more thing, I guess, is that this has become really popular using JSDoc instead of TypeScript, the TypeScript language, in a lot of libraries, because TypeScript is really difficult to do with libraries. It gets really crazy with all the different generics and like types extending types and conditional types. Let's see, I could find something that, let's see, as an example, but I don't know, I don't want to scare anybody.
Oh, for some pretty crazy looking TypeScript.
Yeah. Just a basic library, I don't know. What's your favorite JavaScript library?
Vue.js. They are extremely complex and they're written entirely in TypeScript, so you should be able to find some pretty crazy stuff there. Derek says Express.js plus TypeScript has proved pretty challenging so far, +1 to that.
Yeah, I don't know if Express exposes types in their library. I don't know. You might have to, it might be separate.
Yeah, there's a. Oh, I thought you were going to dive into some random library source code or something. I have a thing I can show for a. How do I screen share? Switch me over to host. I'll show you. This is a library that I've written, and it's actually a really good visual demo of the difference there. You think you need to make me host to be able to screen share, or did you? Oh, there we go.
I did, yeah.
Share screen. Screen 1. There we go. This is a pull request that someone did against a library that I maintain. This library called Create Desktop Shortcuts. It's for Node.js, and it does that. It makes little shortcuts on your desktop for each operating system. So someone made a pull request to add TypeScript into this library, and then we sort of tested it out and compared TypeScript to JSDocs in this case. And in the TypeScript example, setting up TypeScript with it just on its own without JSDocs, when you hover over this Windows keyword, instead of getting information about why it has the red squiggly underlines, it actually shows the definition for the thing on line 5 instead of the thing on line 6. And in here somewhere in this mess, it does actually explain what's going on, but it's really hard to see what's happening. So when we switched over to JSDocs for it, hovering over that initial thing is a lot more easier to read. It explains what it does, creates OS-based shortcuts for files, folders, and applications. Here's an example of how to use it. And here's the params, the options for each operating system, and it returns true if successful or false if it failed. So that's that main one. But then if we hover over the Windows object here, it actually gives us a much more specific hover text where it's showing that the Windows object is optional and it's for Windows shortcut properties, and telling us that it requires a file path. So although it's optional, if you do use it, you do have to pass in a file path into it. So this is a little bit more helpful. And the original thing that TypeScript's giving us does say that, but it's sort of like obscured and hidden in this mess of a whole bunch of other stuff that's unrelated to the thing I'm hovering over. So we ended up switching over to JSDocs, and we didn't use TypeScript at all in this project. And the end result is the same. It still has all the same type checking. It has all the same features and gives you all the same stuff, but it has better documentation that's a little bit more human readable now by switching over to that. Yeah, there's been a few other big libraries like Svelte have switched over to JSDocs away from TypeScript recently.
That was a big one.
Yeah, there's been a few other ones that have happened recently. There's this thing that happens with the web where I guess we'll stop sharing there, where there are sort of potholes in the languages in HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And so we create these meta languages to sort of add suspension to our cars to be able to sort of ignore those potholes. And that's what we did with Sass for a long time. And Even like jQuery, I think you can kind of say did a lot of that, where there's a lot of cross-browser issues and a lot of basic features of the JavaScript language that were missing, that it sort of filled the gaps in for about a decade. But then eventually the language maintainers come through and they add in extra features into the language that are, they're like good enough alternatives to what was in the meta languages, or you know, big improvements over them. We see the same thing with CoffeeScript. CoffeeScript was another JavaScript meta language similar to TypeScript, and almost all of the features that were in ES6 in 2015 were equivalents to stuff that was in CoffeeScript. So once ES6 came out in 2015, there wasn't really a good reason to use CoffeeScript anymore. It kind of had a few niche things, but it pretty much died off instantly at that point. And the TypeScript maintainers have said the same thing is going to happen to TypeScript at some point, where eventually the suspension it's adding to your car won't be needed anymore, because the language maintainers are going to come in and fill in those potholes. And so they see TypeScript as like long term, it's going to fade away at some point, and it's going to be the functionality that it offers. Well, there'll be some native equivalent to that. There's a few features, there's a few proposals in the TC39 for typing systems that may or may not get merged in the future. Some of them are, there's one the TypeScript team did that's literally just TypeScript. And it's like, hey, just merge this into the language, and then your TypeScript code will be able to run in a browser, basically. Just change the file back to .js and you're good. There's other proposals that are closer to JSDocs, where you add a comment and the comment will have the type in it. And if I were to bet, I'd say probably those are going to go in, because there would be no implementation cost to browsers, because they already ignore comments. So they wouldn't have to do a single code change, and that system would just start working automatically in browsers, versus having to implement a ton of new syntactical features that are new to the language. But we'll see what happens there. These are the times we live in. This was a great great demo, great talk to walk through a lot of these features and sort of introducing some of these ideas here. Any other questions in chat? Doesn't have to be about TypeScript, doesn't have to be about types. JSDocs can be about anything.
I'll definitely be checking out JSDocs for a side project I'm thinking about starting, or at least I'll consider using it. And then if I like it, I'll recommend it to my team for some potential greenfield stuff. They've just, every team I've ever been on has been very leery of TypeScript. And I've used it on everything I've done in the last couple of years, or last year at least. And I really love it. But yeah, I can see where the utility could be short-lived, or not short-lived, but time-boxed.
Yeah, for sure. There's like really no activation energy between going from JavaScript to using JSDoc to improve your experience with using JavaScript with a little bit of added types.
Yeah, I was going to show this, Mark, if you're interested. I put a link in chat. This is the thing I mentioned before of ESLint plugin JSDoc. What I'm linking to here is my custom rule set, because the ESLint plugin JSDoc, that plugin has, let's see here, all of these different rules and settings for it. Mm-hmm. And I've gone through and just sort of customized this for my own projects, and it's a quick time saver to get you up and going. And this is what it enforces basically is, and it also shows an example here I mentioned earlier. Let me zoom in a little bit. So this is a pattern that I do in a lot of my libraries. I'll create a file in the root directory called API type definitions.js, and then I'll define my types there in type definitions with the JSDocs, and then export out a variable called whatever it is, and then I can reference that here. And this options object is what the user will pass in, and that could be a big massive object in a library. But I can have all that types set up in one spot and then import in this options object in all my files. Here it does enforce that in my library or my rule set, it enforces that you have to have a comment above each function. And the function has to have a sentence that ends in a period. And that's basically just because I'll like be halfway through typing something and get distracted and save and then forget. And so then I'll be like, oh, finish what I was typing. So it does require a description for the function. And then any parameters you have, it will require a parameter and a type, the name of the parameter, and then it adds 2 spaces after whatever the longest one is and make sure that all of the descriptions line up. And they all require some type of description. And if there is a return, the linter will catch that and say you need to add a return, or if you have a return and then you like refactor this and said, I don't actually want to return something in this function, the linter will catch that and tell you that you're defining a return that doesn't exist. And if you rename the arguments here, add in new ones or rearrange them, then it will catch that they don't sync up with the comment anymore, and it will tell you you need to fix those. So it's a good way to just sort of do basic linting of this stuff and enforce this. And it will automatically do all the formatting of adding in all these spaces and stuff to make it look nice and clean and consistent so that these curly braces all start at the same point on the line. So it just does all that for you. It just does all the formatting. So you just sort of fill in the blank and then hit npm run fix, and your linter will run with the -- fix command. Yeah, that's what it does.
This is also reminding me that I need to look into making custom ESLint filters or custom ESLint plugins, because I work on a team where code styling apparently is very specific. We have it's like as many vertical lines as you can use apparently, and I want to find a way to catch those so we don't spend as much time on it as we have.
Yeah, I've had to write my own custom linting rules before, so I do have an example of what those look like. So for jest or vtext, for example, this is what it looks like. You do have to. I always end up having to copy and paste, basically come in here and console.
Like the boilerplate.
Yeah, I need to console log out the context basically when it's running over a specific chunk of code, and then paste that into an AST Explorer, an abstract syntax tree explorer online. And so this is doing, all the linting stuff is doing abstract syntax trees stuff, ASTs. So then I'll target whatever it is I'm trying to do. So in this case, I'm targeting this specific chunk of the abstract syntax tree, and whenever ESLint sees this in the tree, it'll run this code here and give me access to the node, and I can check all of these different values. And in this case, all I'm trying to do is, let me find a test file real quick. Here we go. So like this is a describe, here we go. Here's an actual test, and it has a string here. And if I change this E to be lowercase and saved it, then that custom rule I wrote will flag this and be like, hey, all test names should start with a capital letter. So that's what that test is doing. And it looks pretty complex just to check that, basically. Eventually, and it does autofix as well. You can add in a function to autofix where it'll take the first letter of the test name and place it and all that stuff.
Yeah, I think I'm more interested in just detecting rather than autofixing, because as you know, autofix could create a bunch of less than meaningful changes that will make reading pull request / merge request a pain.
Yeah. I mean, I would do a PR just to set up linting and lint the entire base and fix all that in one go, and then that's enforced from then on. So every PR after that, there shouldn't be any weird noise or anything. But yeah, anything that I'm setting up that's new, that's custom, there's like a trial period. Here's a more complex example where there's a lot more conditions and checking.
Sure.
And what this is doing, and this is all from my testing stuff, is
Oh wow, passive voice. Wow,
yeah.
that's cool.
So it automatically converts anything that starts with the word should. It will convert it to the active voice, and the dash fix actually runs. So all of our test names switch this over automatically.
This is huh. I wonder if there's a linter for like, because I might need something like this at work because they have like very specific rules for the test scripts that we write for like the voice that you should use, like user should see, user did see, etc. But
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know if you could do something like that with Gherkin.
And you can see that this like should say X is converted to displays X. So like it's pretty good. And like it detects should have exploded just says explodes. So it's changing the tints as well. And all of that's just really basic string checking. It's all just, it sounds more complex than it is, but it's literally just like, what's the first word, what's the second word, what's the third word, and I just wrote all this up. It's just a couple of if-else statements to handle all those different scenarios. But yeah, that's what it's doing.
So sorry to derail a little bit. Let's see. Drew sent me a unreadable TypeScript library. I don't know if we want to look at that.
Oh, okay. Sure. Is that in the chat?
I'll put it in the chat here.
Copy link.
But it looks like a generic within a generic within a generic within a generic.
Zoom in a little bit here.
On line 58, I think. Yeah.
And it's a very popular library, Redux Toolkit. So they have very complex types, even for stuff like this.
Oh wait, no, this isn't a generic within. It's just a bunch of conditional types, I guess.
Underscore action creator with prepared payload. Pennsylvania will extend prepare action any or void. Oh, I was going to say this earlier. You were showing stuff that TypeScript adds. Void is actually in JavaScript. It's from like the very early days of JavaScript, and nobody has used it in like 20 years. So I'm not surprised at all that people are.
How does it? Is it the same thing as null?
No, it's like I don't remember. Like again, nobody uses it.
So I was familiar with void. I was reading the TypeScript documentation, and they said that the void type, the void type is TypeScript specific, but using void in JavaScript is like a thing that you can do. I did it like once or twice. There's like an ESLint rule that's recommended that says you should not use it.
Don't do that.
yeah.
What it's like, hey, somebody comes from kind of writing C, and they're like, hey, I want to write C-style programs in JavaScript.
You can use it in like in a similar way as you would like in a language like Java, where it's like public static void or whatever. But let's see, what was I gonna say? Like I used it in a sense where like instead of like if you use an error function, it automatically returns whatever you're doing if you don't wrap it in brackets. So if you don't want to return that, you can preface it with void to return undefined instead, which, just if you want to make a nice clean one-liner instead of, wrapping it in brackets or saying return undefined at the end. But it's not like, I don't think it's really that useful. I don't know.
Trying to this code right here reminds me of a library that I use in examples. This is a very old library from the early days of the web. Here we go. It's to check what browser you're in basically, and it uses the browser user agent. But as you scroll through it, it's just like 18 levels deep of nested ternary operators. And everything is just like by hand minified, because this predates when we had minification tools to like automate it. So like everything is just single character variable names, and it's all just done by hand.
It looks like minified.
Yeah,
I kind of changed my mind about nested ternaries. I know they're like ESLint doesn't like them, but I've gotten to a point where if they're properly formatted, like if you use indentation to make it clear what your if, then, and else is, I don't mind them so much.
Are you seeing this? This is properly indented. This is
no. This is super weird. But I'm just saying, in normal JavaScript, because we work with a lot of different brands on the same platform. So it's just conditional logic inside of conditional logic. And so, yeah, it's a lot of that stuff. And like, as soon as I started over the summer, I was like, I hate all of this and I want to change it. And some of it is just a matter of like, some of it now I just use like object lookups for a lot of like specific stuff. But when we have to do like nested logic, I've come around on nested ternaries. I don't hate them anymore.
Well,
I think I would write paragraphs in a review comment if I saw nested ternary.
I don't think Jared likes ternaries at all, like period.
No, not a fan. I'll let the uglifier uglify my code. I don't need to do its job for me. No, like in very rare cases, I'll use them. Like there are just certain cases in JavaScript frameworks where it's just simpler than having to jump through hoops to avoid using them. But yeah, what I end up doing almost always is const and then a variable that explains what I'm trying to do equals, and then the condition I'm trying to do of saying greater than other thing.
And then new line tab, or okay, yeah.
Stuff,
oh, I see what you're doing. Yeah.
Whatever.
So,
and then I'll be like, if, as if, and core, you know, like, or even like.
But see, if I'm not going to use as if or queer somewhere else, if I'm not going to use those somewhere else, they're going to ask me, and I would ask another engineer, like, why does it need to be a const if we're not going to use it someplace else? You know what I mean?
My answer to that is there's like one guiding rule that I have found that will save you years of time, and that is one idea per line. And that allows you to justify rewriting code in any way that's necessary to simplify it down so that each line only conveys one idea and does one thing. And then if you do that, your code is very easily readable and maintainable and understandable and refactorable, because everything just makes sense. Every line just does one thing, and it's pretty straightforward then. And like at the end of the day, what am I losing by having these extra variables? Like
not much. No, I'm just, you know, but they're yeah, some of the people I work with are very persnickety about having to trace back things if it's not declared near enough to the other items.
I would spend all my time coming up with variable names.
And like even this, I would even like break this up onto multiple lines. Like the variable is just a good way of like summing up what I was trying to do here by comparing this. Being like, oh, what does this actually do? And then that's a much better variable name to put down in here. And if this like conveys something else by comparing this, because sometimes it's like, I need this first thing is checking if this specific field is disabled, or like should be disabled or something, and this other field is this other variable is checking like if a certain field has a value, and then like if this thing has a value and this other thing is disabled, or like, you know, the user doesn't have permissions to edit this thing, so it should be disabled, then I can like infer from that a different thing, and that's worth like putting in a variable of like what my actual, like why I care about checking those things. And that's just like way cleaner to read, to be like, oh, this is the variable that tells me that specific thing. So anyways, that's just some code readability stuff. But if you just follow that idea of like one idea per line, even like breaking it up like this, if it's self-explanatory, that's fine. If it's better to like have a variable explaining it's there. Because at the end of the day, all this is going to get uglified and minified down into one line and the fewest characters anyway. So it doesn't matter how it's written. The only thing that matters when you're writing it is like how easy is this? How self-explanatory is this? Yeah. This is fun. This is horrifying. Who found that? Drew? Derek? Who found this? This is horrifying.
Drew found that.
Good example of what not to do. Just never use single character variable names.
I mean, I don't know why it's a convention in like TypeScript and especially libraries, but I don't know.
That's a like there again, like my code's gonna get uglified and minified. I don't need. You should never abbreviate anything, because if you never abbreviate, then everything is predictable. It's self-explanatory. Like if I see just a variable called res, it's like what does that stand for? Is that there's like results or response, or like there's like 50 things that could stand for that are common in code, and it's like just spell it out. Like why are you trying to say 4 characters and you're causing all this extra confusion? And then if you short it just a bar, it's like, oh, nah, good job.
Yeah, and we've run into that too, where naming functions and constants in a consistent way, but like trying to wean people off of using or leaning really hard on abbreviations for things, because depending on the industry, depending on what you're doing, that, as you pointed out, that abbreviation could mean a couple different things, and it gets really confusing.
And there are certain things where like if where like you just can't get away with it. Like for example, if you wrote out hypertext markup language in your variable name instead of HTML.
Well,
okay,
yeah.
Literally,
yeah.
There are fewer people who know what it stands for than just know what it is from the acronym.
Sure.
But then also, like in our app at work, we have assets, and those assets can belong to an organization. And literally every single person in the entire company calls them orgs, O-R-G, orgs. What org is that in? What's the org for this? And in all of our code, it says organizations. Every single variable, every single example, it just says organizations, because like, you know, that's a tribal thing where people just happen to be calling it that right now. And like, if you're brand new to the code and you're not integrated into the tribe of how everyone at the company uses certain vernacular substitutions, you're going to be maybe confused by what org means. So just everything's organization.
I mean, that's fair, but I was kind of thinking about maybe why they do single letter variable names in TypeScript types like this. And I guess thinking about it, maybe it's because they're trying to differentiate generics from regular types. Maybe. You wouldn't be able to tell, like if you name these is single variable. Well, I guess a variable, what do you call it? The args here is more than one, but I don't know. That's all I could come up with. But it's definitely very common to see. And I guess I'm, what do you call it? I'm guilty of doing that as well, but definitely not with definitely not with multiple generics, just the one, you know, T. It's I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, I should show the end result here. I showed the other thing because Mark might be interested in this. Here is the actual API type definitions file that I ended up creating. So the thing that I'm exporting out here at the bottom is just this one variable options. I'm defining it here with options, and that's just going to be undefined by default. But by giving it an @type of options here, when I export this out, I can import that into other files and have access to it for setting up the types. So that is exporting out this object basically, or this type definition comment block, and it has all of its information in it. And anytime there is a function or an object, I will break that off to its own thing. So I'm sort of flattening these out. So this object here is called OSX, and that's the type for this options object. So then it has a file path and output path and name and stuff.
Can you not import types like inside of the JSDoc comment instead of exporting an empty variable?
This is just how I got it to work in this project. If I go to the actual file, or any of them really, doesn't matter, but they should all import this in. Yeah, there it is. I'm importing in the options variable from the type definitions, and then I'm just setting it here. And this was just the cleanest way I found to do it, rather than having a big blocky import statement here built in. I can just import this in at the top, and then all of these different places that use it, it's just one reference there. And this is a thing I made up. I just make all these all caps, one word for all my type definitions that I'm exporting out. I don't know if that's a normal thing. It's just something that I did here just to make it stand out to me as to like, these are for my types.
Yeah, that's fair.
And then you'll see that this is what the linter is put in place. And you can add in an optional example on these as well, and the linter will enforce a return above and below that to kind of separate it out.
Well, thank you all for showing up, and thank you, Javaughn, so much for this talk. You did a really good job.
Yeah, that was great, man.
Appreciate it. Thank you. And no problem.
Cool. So thanks for coming out, everybody. We'll see you in a month.
All right.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
See you.
Thanks, Javaughn.
Thanks for watching this video. We'll be uploading more throughout the year, featuring other local speakers, so be sure to subscribe to see more. If you know someone who would benefit from this video, please share it with them. And feel free to reach out to freeCodeCamp Indy if you'd like to speak at one of our future events. Again, thanks for watching.